All New X-Men number 10 picks up where Uncanny X-Men number 3 left off. Scott Summers has arrived at the Jean Grey School in search of recruits for his mutant revolution. Wolverine, as well as many other X-Men, do not take kindly to Scott's intrusion. Quentin Quire encourages his headmaster to gut him. Scott reiterates that he has come in peace, and he will take anyone who wants to leave with, this includes any of the time-traveling original 5 X-Men. When Beast berates him for killing Charles Xavier, Scott points out that pulling their older selves out of the time stream is just as morally reckless. He says that he will give everyone some time to think on their decision and return later. The encounter leaves everyone shaken. Young Scott is genuinely surprised after learning his older self killed Xavier while he was under the influence of the Phoenix Force. It was not in cold blood as he had been led to believe. He even accuses Beast of hiding the truth and manipulating him. Wolverine's X-Men try to anticipate who might actually leave with Scott. Kitty boils it down, saying everyone has to follow their own path. When Old Scott returns, the Cuckoos immediately decide to leave with him. The issue ends on a cliffhanger when an unknown character shocks everyone by announcing their intent to leave.
I cannot believe that was the ending. I just wanted to see so badly who it was, and no.
Yeah, they definitely want to make it so you'll buy Uncanny X-Men.
Yeah.
But who do you think is the person who's leaving that's shocked everyone? Quentin Quire or...
Well, I don't know. Wolverine seems to have like one of the most surprised looks on his face, and he seems to be kind of pissed. He's like, no, I don't want you to leave. So it can't be Quentin Quire, because he would obviously love for him to leave.
Yeah.
I think it might be Jean Grey.
I think it's Jean as well. Young Scott seemed very shocked, and I think he would only be shocked if it was one of the original 5. And
I also think that there's some hints during this issue that we can sort of say that maybe it's Jean. She sort of like looks out longingly out at a window, and Kitty is saying the line about, you have to choose your own path, and I think that's supposed to be kind of like a nudge or a hint at what could possibly be in the future. So assuming it is Jean Grey, does this mean the all-new X-Men are going to split, you think? The original 5 are going to split up, or are they all going to say, hey, Jean's going, let's all go with Jean? I think it comes down to the issue of leadership again. Who do they view as their leader? And if they really do view Jean as their leader, they'll go with her. But I don't necessarily know that's the case right now. I was sort of thinking that they might all leave when Jean decides to leave, even though they all might not 100% agree with it. They got to stick together. That's why they wouldn't let certain people return to the past. If the original 5 all did go with Old Scott's side, it provides them with a new perspective. We saw a little bit of that in this issue when Scott is kind of giving his speech. And what did you think of that? Well, first off, Scott comes in and he seems to have a very practiced rhetoric. The same way he basically humiliated the Avengers, he comes across and just catches every one of the other mutants flat-footed with his argument. And he, to me, seems like he's like the mutant politician. He's really just spreading his propaganda everywhere. I mean, Alex Summers Havoc did the exact same thing last week in Uncanny Avengers, saying, like, don't use the M word. They got the politician Jean in their blood. They're the mutant Kennedys. They are a little bit like the Kennedys, kind of like a family of leaders. You get Havoc now leading the Uncanny Avengers, which is, I think, the Mutant Reconciliation Force, or whatever Captain America's calling it now. Yeah. Scott leading the Mutant Revolution. You got Volkanov in space leading a fragment of the Shi'ar Empire. It's in their blood. Yep. We've actually seen Scott's argument before in a previous issue of All New X-Men, and it was a very different scenario because Magneto comes up to him and Scott's going through a lot of angst because he's dealing with his powers malfunctioning. And in that scenario, Scott comes out the loser because Magneto comes up and says, it was still you who pulled the trigger. But I think that argument is a lot different as well because Magneto's one of his closest confidants, whereas the speech he's giving in front of the Jean Grey school, it's like to the more general public. So this is a show where that might be more towards the actual truth of what he thinks. Right. One of the most interesting points Scott brings up is actually targeted right at Beast, saying that there's not much difference between what Beast did in bringing back these all-new X-Men and what Scott did, which is do what needed to be done at that point. Right, he's saying you no longer have the moral high ground to, throw Xavier in my face, as usual. But one other part I did really like was the reaction of the original 5 X-Men
A lot of the information they were hearing for the first time, such as, it was Tony Stark who split the Phoenix Force, and...
I'm kind of surprised that they hadn't known all this information prior.
Well, I think the fact that they're finally seeing a new perspective, and maybe somewhat coming around to seeing that Scott isn't like this terrible person, maybe that'll cause the original five to all stick together and all go with Scott.
I think one of the defining features of the X-Men titles is just a lot of gray area. A lot of mutants are in the right or wrong, you're not really sure. I mean, Magneto really just is always there. And I think having all new X-Men see both sides and not really being sure who's in the right, I think fits with just X-Men in general.
So as a grade for all new X-Men number 10, what would you give it?
I'd give this a 4 out of 5. I felt that overall this was one of the issues that I enjoyed reading the most, but the ending just got to me a little bit too much. It was a bit too cheesy. Overall, very good issue though.
I agree. I'm going to give this issue a 4 out of 5 as well. Scott made some great arguments, and it was kind of cool to get to see the original 5 X-Men's reactions to them.
Thanks for watching B3 Comics review of All New X-Men number 10. Before we go, we have a question for you.
We predicted that Jean Grey is going to go with old Scott to his new school. Do you agree with us, or do you think a different X-Men will leave?
Leave your opinions in the comments below, and if you like what you see, please give us a thumbs up.